Hello everybody, welcome to Leon's Chainsaw Parts and Repair. Looking at a Homelite XL2 that I've got in here for repair. Just general maintenance is what it needs. And I recently sold some parts, and the gentleman that bought them really wanted a video of kind of how these things come apart, so this is a perfect opportunity to do that. Pretty much anything that you're going to service on one of these saws requires that you're going to pull the starter cover, and if you're going to go much beyond stuff that's right out here, you're going to pull the whole engine out of the case. That includes for sprocket replacement. You can see sometimes where guys have cut this out. Don't do that. It's not that hard to get these things out. So I'm going to go through the process from top to bottom here, see what we find. I already know that I'll be putting hoses in there, so I have pre-cut my hoses there. If you buy a hose kit from me, same hose that I use here in the shop. So we'll get started here. We need to disconnect the handle from the main body right here, and that is a flathead screw. And you don't have to take the handle all the way off of the starter. It'll come off with the starter cover. So we've got 4 screws right here. Pull those out. The Super 2, the XL2, and the early metal-bodied XL single triggers are all built the same basic way. So, slides right off. First thing that I see is oil all over here and all over the oil tank. The cap is loose. That could be why. But I'll be cleaning this up good before it gets reassembled to see if it's got a leak somewhere. Okay, so we've got that loose. You can see that you can get to your duck bill for your fuel tank. You can get to the coil. If you were to pull the flywheel, you could get to the points underneath that, but there's not a hell of a lot else you can get. So the engine itself is held in the case by 2 screws on top and 2 screws on the bottom. You've got to take your spark plug out. I've already loosened mine because I checked it for spark. This is the wrong plug. This is a 3/4 socket that takes this out, and you can see that it's got a washer, a compression washer on it. These have a tapered seat in the cylinder head, so this should be taking a DJ7J spark plug, which you can see has the tapered seat and no crush gasket. So we will not be putting the NGK back in. So these screws should be Loctited in place from the factory. If they've been taken out, good odds are that I didn't take the time to Loctite them again, but I highly recommend it. Because if these loosen up while you're running, not only do you risk losing them, but they'll hog out the holes in the case so the engine doesn't actually sit still. It'll rattle around and eventually destroy your case. Now these are not factory down here, but thankfully they're still the proper thread size and pitch. So that'll save me the hassle of having to put some Healy coils in the block. Alright, so basically loosen the case right now. It's a good time to disconnect your kill switch wire and just get it off to the side. And move the choke up to where you can pull this air filter cover out. Alright, so the common procedure that people used to use was to pop this throttle handle cover off. You don't need to do that. This is a neat little trick that works better than I would have ever thought, but it does work. So take your spark plug wire and kind of tuck it in just between the case and the muffler, and it'll start to slide everything out. And as it comes out, Make sure I get a good close-up of the throttle rod there. You see the throttle rod is coming out. You want to leave it connected to the carburetor, and it's eventually going to come out to where it just disconnects from this little trigger mechanism. Right there. The throttle rod goes into that. So as I pulled it out, it just slid right out. And reassembly will be the exact opposite of that. Get it lined up, pair of needle nose pliers, hold it right up there as you're sliding it in, slam dunk, no worries. So now that the engine's out of the case, you can see you can get to just damn near anything you need to. Sprocket, you need to replace it, this is the time to do it. This is an early model that has the little keeper on there that I hate so much. That's going to be a miserable pain to get off. But other than that, you know, it looks like somebody's been in here recently to replace this fuel line. They did not replace the oil hoses here, and this oil fitting, steel fittings actually pulled out of the housing here, so that explains all the oil everywhere. That's a better thing than having the tank bad. But when I looked at it earlier, get the carburetor off of here so that I can get that oil tank out and show you guys. And even that oil filter, air filter is soaked in oil. Oh yeah, somebody's been in here recently. Look, fresh gasket there. That's good news. Okay, maybe that carburetor won't be a pain. Alright. So this has most of a tank of oil in it. Unfortunately, that's the way it always goes. But you see, damn. I don't know how I'm going to get enough light there to see this, but I'll try this shop light and see if that does the trick. The top hose, there, I think that's showing up. That top hose should have a centered piece of bronze and a duckbill valve on it, and it does not. So, what that means is the pulse oil system is not going to work. There's going to be a giant vacuum leak because the engine provides a pulse from this port through, from the port that pulled out here that I got to push back in, through that duckbill valve. Duckbill valve is supposed to close. Leaves pressure in the tank, which pushes oil out through this fitting and then down to the bar pad. So when the engine's in its appropriate cycle, it's going to have a vacuum leak when that tube is gone. Not to mention, the oiler's not going to work. Now, I have found over the years that 9 times out of 10, a missing tube and valve are at the bottom of the oil tank. I don't really want to pour it into my jug of waste oil here, so I'll be careful with it, but at a certain point I'm just going to dump this on the bench. See if we can get that out of there. But I'll bet it's down there. There it is. So that's usually what they come out looking like. All that black goop is the original duckbill valve that's all dissolved. So that'll have to be cleaned up. You can get some of it off just with a paper towel, depending on how long it's hardened and turned to nasty crap. That can of acetone that I keep on the bench is good for dissolving and cleaning this up. And what I'll do is I'll put this this crummy end in the hose and leave the good end sticking out this time so that it can be worked properly. Alright, so the hose replacement part of this job is super simple. If your old hoses are in place, go ahead and just pull them out. And they're going to stretch and break like that one did, because they're rotten. If you have any question about whether the hoses have ever been replaced, just replace them. Do yourself a favor and don't waste your time going to all this trouble to fix something, putting it back together and finding out you got a bum hose. Because then you get to do this all over again. Which I'm sure we all have better things to do than do the same job twice. God, these things are rotten. Alright. This is messy. So you got two methods you can use on these hoses. Most of the time, I can get the hose to go through with just a pair of needle nose pliers. If not, what you can do is take a small piece of wire, bend a hook in the tip, pierce the hose. That's why I always put an angle cut on my hoses that I sell. Feed it through there, tie it up, and then you can pull it through like that. Like I say, on these little tanks, usually I don't have to do that. But, what the hell, this time I think I'm going to. So, since my workbench is a mess, finding an appropriate instrument can be difficult. Alright, so I've got a small hole there. Just hook this through it, pinch that as tight as you can so it doesn't get caught, and fish it into your tank. And this requires a little bit of finesse so that you don't just tear it out. I like to put a little oil on the outside of the hose. Yeah, you dirty thing, come on. And this may just tear. It would figure that the tank I choose to use a demo for is a pain in my neck.